Hi guys, hi, hello, welcome back. What we got going on today is we're going to be talking about our final two Chinese dynasties. Uh, Again, for this unit, you've got the Ming dynasty and then the Qing dynasty. These two dynasties are, again, the first of which, the Ming, is something that'll be a little bit more straightforward. The Qing is more complex because they are the final dynasty of China. It's be a little bit more notes today than normal. At the end of our PowerPoint here, I've got work to be completed. It'll have your first, not your first, again, I'm in the wrong class in my brain. You're going to have your homework assignment for this week. Which has to do with the fall of the Chinese dynasty system and kind of trying to understand how Europeans play a large role in that. So we're going to just dive right in. So you should have your notebooks out, and we're talking our final dynasties of China. So the Ming Dynasty, I'm just going to throw all this up here right away so that I'm not going to have to be clicking all the time. So the Ming Dynasty is going to take over after the Yuan dynasty falls apart. Our Mongol, again, family is unfortunately going to fall victim to the same ills of all these other Chinese dynasties. The Ming are going to take up the Mandate of Heaven and take control in 1368, and they'll be around until the, again, mid 1600s. So they have a long time where the same family is still on the throne of China. Big accomplishments during the Ming Dynasty is that, they managed to reclaim a lot of land that had been lost to the Mongols and weren't part of Kublai Khan's again, kingdom once it was off to him after Genghis Khan died. They are going to create a centralized education system. So all of the children of China will be receiving the same education, which is a pretty new revolutionary idea. They're going to try and increase manufacturing, food production, trying to make things just a little bit faster, more efficient, so that they can feed and, again, provide for their growing population as much as possible. Something else that the Ming Dynasty is well known for is the fact that their government, the way it is organized, is really well done. There's a centralized bureaucracy, so taking kind of cues from the more effective dynasties of the past, they've got lots of branches and committees and groups that are making sure everything in the country is running well, right? An interesting thing about the Ming is that this right here overlaps almost perfectly with the age of exploration, which we talked about last semester, this 1300s to 1500s time period when a lot of Europeans were going out into the world and trying to find new connections and to do all those sorts of things. Europeans aren't the only people to do that, weirdly enough. So during the Ming Dynasty, they're going to spend some time going from China out. So that's where Inside Out goes. Again, they're going to send ships and explorers, just like the European kingdoms did, to go and find new products and new, again, raw materials to learn about these unknown places that are well established by this point. But, and you have to think about this in the 1400s, it's very difficult to move about. Most people never leave their homes. So this is an opportunity by the Ming Dynasty, by the ruling family, to go and gather some information about their neighbors. So they go to India and to Africa, and they explore and they learn, they bring back, again, new things. The early days of exploration in the Ming Dynasty are temporary. It's an interesting kind of what if in history, because if the Ming had continued to push their exploration, it's possible that they would have made it to North America before Columbus did. You can see here they started sooner, and Columbus doesn't make it to the New World until 1492. So again, it's kind of an interesting thought process. Is if again Chinese dynasty had made it to North America first, how different would our country be today? The answer is very um, and like I said, the exploration of the Ming Dynasty is temporary. They do stop after a certain amount of time. Um, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be totally isolated. In the early days of the Ming, Europeans will make it to China. So having this outside in influence, the Portuguese make it first. And the Portuguese are always the first anywhere, is what I have discovered through my study of history. Though they are never the most powerful empire, they always just get there first, lay down their influence, take what they can. The next sort of wave of outside in to China is going to be through Jesuit missionaries. Jesuit is a offshoot of Christianity, and they're coming to China to try and again spread the word of God. When they're not successful, because ultimately Christianity never really makes a strong I guess the foundation in China, there's a lot of competing philosophies and ideas that just, again, are more suited to the people of China. Those Jesuit missionaries go back to Europe and they go back to, again, where they came from, and they describe China to the people as this really mysterious and foreign and exotic place, and it becomes a fascination of a lot of Europeans at that time. Again, how these people who are so different from them are prospering and they're so wealthy, and it's a very interesting moment. And it does create this strange attraction of Europeans to China going forward. The Ming Dynasty, again, falls apart by the mid 17th century. The reasons are from internal power struggles. Again, the Ming family is going to have a lot of issues about who is in charge. Those who end up being put onto the throne are usually pretty weak. A lot of them are kids because, again, they keep passing away or, again, being killed in various conflicts. It's pretty corrupt. A lot of high taxes. An epidemic hits. Again, this is an illness that wipes out a huge chunk of people, aka the plague. Knowing that the plague originates from Asia, they also suffered through a plague, which, and then a poor harvest happens. All of these things lose the Ming dynasty, the mandate of heaven, which allows for the final dynasty to take place, which is going to be the Qing dynasty, is how it is pronounced. Remembering that Chin was our other one that was similar to this, but of course, new family, new time. They take over pretty much right after. They're going to challenge the Ming directly and take control from them, and they'll be in control until 1911. So it's kind of interesting to keep in mind that China had a monarchy system, again, that is very traditional up until the 20th century, where a lot of other countries go through revolution and change sooner than that. Oh, excuse me. I apologize for the yawning. Okay. So the Qing dynasty is unique not just because it's the last, but also because of who the Qing actually are. They come from a specific ethnic group referred to as the Manchu. Manchus were a farming and hunting tribe in a northeastern part of China called Manchuria. And they are going to band together and take control of the Chinese territory in 1644. Because the Manchus are a unique ethnic group with their own traditions and their own sort of background, when they take control of China, they focus a lot of time and energy on trying to force the rest of the Chinese population to adopt their customs. This dynasty, this particular one, if you are, and again, this is a deep cut kind of thing. If you are at all into martial arts films, a lot of them are set sometime within this dynasty, and you can tell because of the way that the hair is cut. The Manchu tradition amongst men is that they would shave their hairline back to the middle, and then they would allow the rest of their hair to grow very long, and they would wear it braided down their back. It's an interesting sort of look, obviously, but it's traditional to the Manchu, and it becomes traditional in China. And you could tell someone didn't agree with the Qing dynasty because they refused to wear their hair like that. They were considered rebels and they would be executed. Eventually, after the initial resistance of the Qing dynasty and the forced changes here, the dynasty will flourish. They fix some of the problems which had developed during the Ming, which every dynasty tries to do, and they restore peace. They don't change a lot. Again, a lot of the stuff stays pretty similar. I mean, culturally, yes, they change quite a bit, but the rest of it is going to be fine. Most of those systems are going to stay. They might change and adjust small parts, but to remain distinct and separate. Again, they create this like new class and separate military units, but it's all pretty run of the mill. They share power with some Chinese administration, and you have to realize that the Manchus see themselves as separate to the rest of the Chinese population because of their ethnic background. Again, Chengzai is the greatest ruler of the Qing dynasty. He took control when he was just a teenager, and he ruled for 61 years, which, considering the timing here, guys, that is a very long time to be in control of a country. To live that long and to be a successful ruler for that long, again, kudos to him, honestly. What made him such a good ruler is that politically he was very savvy. Savvy is a way of saying very good with working with politics, very talented. He had a very strong character, hard worker, very intelligent, a scholar, tolerant, things like that. An interesting sort of, I guess, moment in his time as ruler in the Qing dynasty is the Treaty of Nerchinsk, which is named for Russia, obviously. Throughout this dynasty, the Russian Empire and the Chinese kingdom are having a lot more interaction with each other. They share boundaries. You have to kind of keep in mind, and I know it's hard sometimes if you don't have a good geographic understanding of the area, that Russia borders China again entirely. Mongolia is not a separate country yet, so you see this very much overlap going on. And this agreement that he makes on behalf of China says that China and Russia, they'll stop fighting with each other. Um, but if they are going to stop fighting, China has to agree to not trade with other European powers. The only foreign country that they're going to work with is going to be Russia. And that, of course, gives Russia this advantage in considering how much Europeans would really like to have trade with China. It puts them in an interesting situation that's going to help contribute to their downfall. Before we get into the last half of this PowerPoint, like I said, it's a little longer, so just bear with me. We're going to talk about the various different elements that are going to lead to the end of the collapse of the dynasty system. All right. Focused on the Qing because they're the last dynasty, of course. So we're going to talk about external pressures, things and ideas that are happening on the outside and impacting the Qing dynasty. And then we'll talk about internal issues overall. Okay. So I'm just going to throw all of this up here. It's easier for me to just talk. Okay. So the external pressure is coming from European powers or West trying to break into the markets of China. Again, like I said, they're fascinated with the products and they're fascinated with the people and the culture of this place because it is so different to that of Western civilization. And the Chinese, through their negotiation with Russia, have limited a lot of the contact with with other European powers. Britain is going to be the one who is the most aggressive about trying to change their relationship with China and the Qing. They would really like to trade with them at this moment before things get very intense. They're only allowed to trade and not they can't come on to mainland China. They have to go to a small island off the coast, and only are they allowed to be there March through again October through March. So there's like a window of time in a small place, and the British just would really like more contact. They would really like there to be again in this increased sort of interaction, goods going both ways, and again all that kind of stuff. And the British felt that they were being treated unfairly. They were importing way more stuff out of China than China was buying from Great Britain. That when they went to try and change this, it didn't go well. They asked, they basically showed up, they like requested again an audience with the leader of the Qing dynasty, and they showed up and they're like, hey, like please, like let's make a new deal, let's figure this out. And the Qing emperor was like, nah. uh, Weirdly enough, the British didn't take that well. So what ends up happening is by this point, this is like mid 1800s. Great Britain has managed to secure themselves one of the largest empires in the world, in the history of the world, including India. India shares a boundary with China. So what the Brits do, and this is very devious, is that they are going to introduce a highly addictive drug to China over the boundary of India. That highly addictive drug is opium. The Chinese, the Qing dynasty, tried to stop the spread of this drug and the usage of this drug in China proper, but it's highly addictive. Again, they made the trade illegal. They again push back against the British, and well, the British are not an army to be disregarded. They have the best navy in the history of the world. So when the Qing dynasty pushes back against the British are going to declare full on war with them. This exchange, which takes place over a couple of years, is referred to as the Opium War, Opium Wars. It ends or concludes with the Chinese having to give in to the British. The Treaty of Nanking or Nanjing, depending on the translation, of 1842 is going to change the relationship of China and Great Britain again a lot. They're going to gain control of 5 ports on the mainland of China, so they're going to have direct economic contact. They're going to be basically given the city and settlement of Hong Kong. Hong Kong will remain under British control until the 90s. So we're 1990s. I apologize, the 1990s. So for a very long time, it's like another colony of Great Britain. It, and they're going to basically, this is so funny to me, because the British win, they're going to give the bill to the Chinese overall. So they're going to get money from them to pay for the war that the British declared on the Chinese. It is such a the winners dictate history kind of thing. They're going to get tax breaks. I mean, there's so many things. This whole conflict is going to change the power of the Qing. I mean, they can't control their country because now the British have forced their way into their country and taken a lot of that power away from them. It's not just and the outside forces or the external elements that are hurting the Qing dynasty. Internally, just within the people of the Qing dynasty, there is intense corruption and incompetence. And just like we saw with the Ming, leaders become less effective over time for various reasons. There is rapid population growth happening during the Qing, and they're not producing enough food for everyone. When people are starving, they're very quick to violence and quick to intense reaction. So in the rural parts of the country, again, little sort of revolts start to happen, and it's very hard for the Qing dynasty to be able to stop them. It's very expensive. This is all happening post Opium War, so the Qing has already taken a lot of hits, and eventually the people are going to be so upset with the Qing that they stage a full-scale rebellion, the Taiping Rebellion, which starts in 1850 and goes about 15-ish years or so, is a peasant revolt, again, led by a gentleman by the name of Hong, and his last name I can't pronounce well, so I won't. This is an interesting rebellion because it's the first time that a group of Chinese are going to say that the mandate of heaven has been lost, and try and start their own, but it doesn't work the same way because they're peasants. They're the lowest of the low. No one gives them any respect. So they claim this new dynasty, the Heavenly Kingdom of Great Peace. They called for social reform. They wanted to give land to the peasants, treat women as equals. Again, women fought in the Taiping Rebellion, give up all their possessions, share everything equally. And I'm hoping that that sounds a little familiar. This is a little bit like socialism before the official ideas of socialism have made it to China. So you can see already that the people of China are ready for a massive change. In the end, the Taiping Rebellion is going to be shut down, but only because the Qing are going to ask other European powers to help them. Again, tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about the other groups and the other things that contribute to the fall of the Qing in regards to other powers and imperialism overall. And this devastating civil war, because that's what ends up happening, is you have this peasant again group, the Heavenly Kingdom of Great Peace, facing off against the Qing with their allies of the European powers. 20 million Chinese will die in this civil war. And well, again, I don't know about you, but after a civil war that lasts 15 odd years, I think you'd be pretty upset with the leaders at that time. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. That's kind of it. So you guys can put your notebooks away. As far as homework goes, keep checking classroom, getting assignments, reminders, stuff like that. Remember, today I'm going to be popping through classroom and giving credit and commenting that you guys have started work on your study aids. We're about halfway done with the unit, so you're going to want to make sure that you're not putting this off to the last second. Again, those points will go in the grade book before the end of the day. You'll also see on classroom that your new assignment, the assignment for the week, besides your study aid, has to do with Chinese dynasties and coming to an end. So you're going to use your notes that we talked about today, as well as the textbook. There's a table and some questions, and you'll be submitting it to turnitin.com for credit. Other reminder is just that the end of this unit is next week, Friday, the 22nd. So please make sure that you're keeping up with your study aid. Even though there's not another check, you should still work on it a little bit each day so that you don't have to do everything in the last possible second. All right, with that said and done, that's all we got. I hope you guys have a good day.